Diver spots chain stuck on propeller. What he found on the other end froze him. A commercial diver was hired for a routine job to clean the massive propeller of a cargo ship that had been rusting in a harbor for 15 years. But as he descended into the murky water, he found the propeller was entangled in a colossal, ancient chain. He decided to follow it. What he found at the end of that chain was a terrifying and radioactive secret from the height of the Cold War, a discovery so dangerous it would force him to immediately call the Navy and trigger a full-scale, citywide evacuation. But before we start our story, smash that like button, make sure you're subscribed, and hit that notifications bell so you won't miss any of our new, incredible stories. To understand the ghost that was sleeping at the bottom of the harbor, we must first journey back to the most dangerous and secretive battlefield of the 20th century, the deep ocean during the Cold War. For more than 40 years, the United States and the Soviet Union waged a silent, invisible, and incredibly high-stakes war beneath the waves. The primary weapons in this conflict were nuclear-powered submarines. These were the most complex and deadly machines ever created by humankind, capable of prowling the abyss for months at a time, armed with nuclear-tipped missiles and torpedoes that could wipe entire cities off the map. American, British, and Soviet submarines played a constant deadly game of cat and mouse, hunting and shadowing each other in the eternal darkness, each side listening for the faint acoustic signature that would betray an enemy's position. But this secret war came with an immense and terrifying risk. In the rush to build and deploy these powerful weapons, accidents were inevitable. In the official terminology of the U.S. military, an accident involving a nuclear weapon is given a chilling code name, a broken arrow. From 1950 to 1980, there were at least 32 documented broken arrow incidents. A B-52 bomber carrying 2 hydrogen bombs crashed in Palomares, Spain in 1966, scattering radioactive plutonium across the countryside. Another B-52 crashed near Thule Air Base in Greenland, losing its 4 hydrogen bombs in the icy water. The U.S. Navy also lost 2 complete nuclear submarines, the USS Thresher and the USS Scorpion, both of which sank with their nuclear reactors and nuclear torpedoes and remain on the ocean floor to this day. The Soviet Union had an even more disastrous record, though much of it was kept secret for decades. Their early-generation nuclear submarines were notoriously unreliable, and they suffered a series of catastrophic accidents, including reactor meltdowns and fires that sent multiple nuclear-armed submarines to the bottom of the sea. The ocean floor, in many parts of the world, is a silent graveyard of these lost, terrifying, and still potentially radioactive weapons of the Cold War. It was one of these forgotten ghosts that was about to be discovered in the most unlikely of places. Our story begins in the present day in Portsmouth, England. Portsmouth Harbor is one of the busiest and most historic naval ports in the world, the traditional home of the British Royal Navy. But like many industrial ports, it is also a place where old, unwanted ships can sometimes come to rest. For the past 15 years, a massive, aging cargo vessel called the Meridian Star had been docked at a remote, disused pier. The shipping company that owned it had gone bankrupt, and the ship had been left to rust, a silent, forgotten giant. Now, a new company had bought the ship for scrap, and a commercial diving team was hired for a routine inspection. Our protagonist, a man we'll call Jake, was the lead diver on the job. He was a seasoned professional, an expert in underwater salvage and repair. His task that morning was simple: to inspect and clean the ship's massive, 5-bladed propeller to prepare the vessel for its final tow to the scrapyard. As he descended into the cold, murky water of the harbor, the colossal, dark shape of the ship's hull loomed above him. He swam beneath the stern and approached the gigantic, 20-foot diameter bronze propeller. And then he saw the problem. It was entangled. A massive, heavily rusted iron chain, its links as thick as a man's leg, was wrapped tightly around the propeller blades. Jake knew this was not the ship's own anchor chain. It was older, of a different design, and it was leading straight down, disappearing into the dark, silty seabed below. Puzzled, he signaled his surface team and then began to follow the heavy links downward. The chain descended at a steep angle into the darkness. At a depth of about 40 feet, the water became so dark and murky that his standard lights were useless. He returned to the surface, his mind racing. What could be at the end of that chain? He decided he had to find out. He geared up for a deeper, more serious dive, taking more powerful, high-intensity floodlights and an extra set of oxygen tanks. As he moved closer and his lights illuminated the object's features, a jolt of pure, ice-cold shock went through him. He was looking at the sleek, black, unmistakable hull and the streamlined conning tower of a military submarine. It was a ghost from another era, resting silently on the seabed. He had just found a lost submarine in the middle of one of the busiest harbors in the world. Jake Patterson ascended from the dark, cold water, his mind reeling with the impossible discovery he had just made. He knew with absolute certainty that this was no longer a commercial salvage job. It was a matter of national security. As soon as he was back on his boat, he made a direct, urgent call not to the local police, but to the Royal Navy Command at Her Majesty's Naval Base, Portsmouth. The response was immediate and serious. Within the hour, a perimeter was quietly established around the derelict cargo ship, and a team of the Royal Navy's elite clearance divers was dispatched to the scene. These are the experts, the military divers trained to deal with underwater threats, from unexploded mines to secret recovery operations. The Navy divers descended, following Jake's directions, and confirmed his report. Resting on the seabed was a Cold War-era submarine. Based on its distinct profile, they identified it as a Soviet-era diesel-electric submarine, likely a Whiskey class, a type that was used extensively for covert espionage and patrol missions in the 1960s and 70s. The divers began the tense and dangerous process of trying to breach the main hatch. After several hours of careful work, they finally managed to force it open. As they swam into the flooded, pitch-black interior, a place that had been sealed for decades, their powerful lights cut through the floating silt. Their lights scanned across the rows of torpedo tubes, and there, on the side of a torpedo that was still partially in its launch tube, they saw the universal, chilling symbol that every military professional is trained to recognize on sight. This was not just a sunken submarine. This was a broken arrow. A lost, unaccounted for, and potentially unstable nuclear weapon was sitting at the bottom of one of the busiest harbors in the United Kingdom, and it was leaking. The divers' radiation detectors began to click with an urgent, staccato rhythm, confirming low but significant levels of radioactive contamination in the surrounding water. They immediately retreated and reported their horrifying findings. The news triggered a top-secret, high-level emergency response. The British government's Cobra Committee was convened. They were now facing an almost unthinkable scenario. For decades, a leaking Soviet-era nuclear torpedo had been silently poisoning the waters of Portsmouth Harbor. The greatest and most immediate threat was the weapon itself. The authorities made the difficult and secret decision to begin an immediate but quiet evacuation of the residential areas closest to the discovery site, using the plausible cover story of a major industrial gas leak to avoid causing a citywide panic. While the evacuation was underway, a specialized team of military EOD experts and nuclear weapons scientists for several days, they worked in absolute secrecy, using robotic, submersibles, and highly trained divers to first stabilize and then safely remove the nuclear torpedo from the submarine. It was a procedure where a single mistake could have had unimaginable consequences. With the nuclear threat finally neutralized, investigators were able to piece together the full, incredible story. They concluded that the Soviet submarine had likely been on a covert, intelligence-gathering mission during the height of the Cold War, secretly anchored in the deep shipping channel of the harbor to monitor the movements of the Royal Navy. During a severe storm, the massive 15-year-old cargo ship, the Meridian Star, had likely broken free from its moorings. Adrift in the storm, its own massive anchor chain had snagged on the anchor chain of the hidden submarine. The collision had damaged the submarine, causing it to sink to the bottom. The story of the diver and the lost submarine is a powerful and terrifying reminder of the silent, invisible dangers that still litter our world, the forgotten and deadly legacies of the Cold War. It is a story of how a simple, routine job by a commercial diver accidentally uncovered a secret that could have led to a modern-day catastrophe, and a testament to the brave professionals who work in the shadows to keep us safe from the ghosts of our own past.